Well, it has begun. Old Marvel legacy actors are now returning and are being confirmed to return to the MCU. We knew this was going to happen because we are in the multiverse saga. We've already seen some really cool variants in the MCU, especially in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where we kind of saw what could be in a different universe when we saw Captain Carter. In her universe, she went on to take the serum instead of Steve Rogers. We've seen a variant of Mr. Fantastic before we get our actual Mr. Fantastic. And we've already seen Chris Evans return not as Captain America, but as the Human Torch. And now it looks like he is solidified and locked in his return, possibly as Captain America. We're unsure. We'll talk about that in this video, but it does seem to be confirmed that he is returning for Avengers Doomsday. Not Avengers Secret Wars, although I'm sure he'll make his return there as well, unless his character somehow gets killed in Doomsday, in which he could still return in Secret Wars, but this is specifically talking about Doomsday. Chris Evans makes his way back to the MCU once again, and this is being reported by The Wrap. And I'll read you the article. Coming from TheWrap.com, the article headline is Chris Evans sets Marvel return in Avengers Doomsday, and this is an exclusive by the website. The subheadline states the actor most recently appeared in Deadpool and Wolverine as his Fantastic Four character, Johnny Storm. As we all know, and that was incredibly epic, and it's epic that he's returning. The article reads, Chris Evans is returning to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as part of the cast for Avengers Doomsday, the highly anticipated sequel that will also star Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. The Wrap has learned exclusively. Evans will be involved in some capacity, but the extent and exact nature of his role is unknown. After sunsetting his Steve Rogers character in 2019's Avengers Endgame, Evans recently made a brief MCU return in this summer's Deadpool and Wolverine, but as his character Johnny Storm from the Fox's Fantastic Four movies, not as Captain America. And that is literally the end of the article. So not much is really known about his return, but we know what our options are for his return. And I'm going to go ahead and state, maybe not the most obvious, but I think some fans really would love this out there. I've seen some people talk about it online. I think a lot of people would love to see an evil variant of Captain America show up in the MCU, specifically as Captain Hydra, because it would be so different than anything we've really seen. Although we did just see Chris Evans really mouth off as Johnny Storm. That was quite the scene in Deadpool and Wolverine and was really not anything like Captain America. However, he wasn't evil. This is kind of like a lot of people really wanting to see superior Iron Man show up in the MCU, whether that's Tom Cruise or Robert Downey Jr. It would just simply be cool to see a character that we know so differently, and that's what a lot of people think would be really cool about seeing Chris Evans return as Captain Hydra. And here's the deal, the story of Captain Hydra in Marvel Comics actually fits in very well with the multiverse saga. You see, Captain Hydra is Steve Rogers from an alternate timeline in Marvel Comics. In this timeline, he serves Hydra, and when his reality is about to change, Rogers actually gets shielded from this effect, from this change, from this reality warp, and it allows him to go to the main Earth 616 normal without any change. So he's still this Hydra serving Steve Rogers. However, in this new universe, the Earth 616 timeline, he pretends to be Captain America. He poses as him, but secretly, of course, he is an undercover Hydra agent. He ends up working within S.H.I.E.L.D. and ultimately he ends up with Hydra, of course, taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. and the United States of America. He becomes the supreme leader of Hydra until they decide to use the Cosmic Cube to rewrite reality, which brings back the original Steve Rogers. Captain Hydra Steve Rogers would ultimately go on to be arrested and would die. This would be really cool to see because it wouldn't be Chris Evans as a different character like Johnny Storm, it would be him as Steve Rogers, but it would be evil. It would be a completely different take. And we've heard that Doom is going to have a team. Maybe Captain Hydra is a part of his team. I've heard a lot of fans say they would love to see Captain Hydra, but I think a lot of fans would also love to see him return as Captain America. This would obviously have to be a variant. I think it would be kind of a waste to have him return as old man Steve Rogers. It would be cool to see him show up and maybe talk to Sam for a bit, but I think that would be a lot of wasted potential there. Especially since Chris Evans is obviously very willing to come back for significant roles. His role as Johnny Storm in Deadpool and Wolverine was pretty significant. Granted, it was still kind of short. But if he is going to return as an actual good Captain America, Steve Rogers, it would be cool to see him back in action once again. And I mean, at this point in time, we have Robert Downey Jr. returning as Dr. Doom. Imagine a variant of Steve Rogers' Captain America going up against who we know to be Iron Man, except it's not. It's Dr. Doom. And since he's appearing in Avengers Doomsday, perhaps this Captain America could even be from the universe that Dr. Doom is in. I think that actually would be pretty cool. You could do something really cool with the story there, especially if they are going to somewhat address the fact that, it's Robert Downey Jr. playing Doom. He looks just like Iron Man did, just like Tony Stark. There's some things that they could do there. But another option, which I think is probably the coolest option that they could probably possibly do, and that is he returns not just as Steve Rogers, but he also returns as the Human Torch as well. We get him playing two different characters at the same time. This would essentially be like a Deadpool and Wolverine cameo times 2. Except I feel like if they did this, it would be a lot more significant. But one thing that Chris Evans returning in Avengers Doomsday tells us is that this movie is set to be incredibly huge, and we are clearly going to get some big multiversal aspects in this movie. I think a lot of people might be thinking that a lot of the multiversal aspects might be coming after Doomsday. Doomsday ends with a big multiversal destruction, and that's where we get a lot of the multiverse stuff happening in between Doomsday and Secret Wars. And then especially in Secret Wars, we're going to get all of these characters from a bunch of different universes fighting together, which is going to happen, but it sounds like it's going to happen in Avengers Doomsday as well, which isn't that surprising considering Deadline reported that there's going to be over 60 characters appearing in Avengers Doomsday. Well, we already do have a lot of teams and a lot of characters in the current main 616 timeline, but now it sounds like some variants are joining them as well. But of course, there is always the option that Chris Evans is simply going to play a different character entirely, like Robert Downey Jr. As far as we know, as far as what they've told us, Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom is not a Tony Stark variant. He is going to simply be Dr. Doom, Victor Von Doom. Now, I take that at about 50% because, of course, they could just be lying. But they could also be telling the truth, and either way, it doesn't negate the fact that Chris Evans could be playing a different character entirely. He could be playing Iron Man. He could play another Doom variant. How crazy would that be if we had Robert Downey Jr. return to play Doom and Chris Evans returns to play a variant of Dr. Doom as well? I mean, the cool thing is we're smack dab in the middle of the multiverse saga now, especially by the time we get to Avengers Doomsday. So really, what we're starting to see here is that the possibilities for anything to happen in the MCU during the saga are limitless. They're only really limited to the creativity that Marvel Studios and the creators of Avengers Doomsday and the story overall have. But since Chris Evans is now returning, it's confirmed, it seems like they are getting pretty dang creative. And I can't wait to see what their actual plans are. But in the meantime, let me know, what option would you prefer? Him return as a variant of Steve Rogers as Captain America in the fight? Him as an evil Steve Rogers, Captain Hydra? Him as Johnny Storm? Or somebody else entirely? Or do you have ideas of your own? Let me know all of your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. And if you want to stay up to date with the MCU, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on a single video. Please don't forget to like this video, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.